There's an unsettling kind of silence that only appears in the first minutes after midnight, a silence so dense it feels almost intentional, as if the world itself has chosen to hold its breath. Evan Hart noticed that silence more and more these days. It lingered in his apartment like a fog, thick and uneasy, making the shadows appear deeper and the walls feel closer. He had never been afraid of the dark before, but fear has a way of introducing itself slowly, quietly, until it becomes the only thing you hear when the world goes still. Tonight, that silence was broken by a sound he had come to dread, a soft buzz from his phone. Another message, another notification, another accusation. Evan hesitated before picking up the device, already knowing what he would see, yet somehow hoping, irrationally, that this time it would be different. But no, it wasn't. "I saw you again, outside my window. Stop following me." The words were cold, typed without hesitation, without doubt. They came from a woman he had never met, a stranger whose fear was real enough to tremble through the screen. Her name was Hannah Bristow, a bookstore clerk from across town. For 3 weeks now, she had been sending Evan messages like this, angry ones, frightened ones, desperate ones. She claimed he was stalking her, watching her, standing outside her work, following her on her nighttime walks, even staring at her through the train window. Evan exhaled shakily, rubbing his temples. He had never once been to her bookstore, and he certainly had never followed her. What chilled him most wasn't the messages themselves, but the fact that Hannah had sent pictures, blurry ones, dark ones, but clear enough to reveal one terrifying truth. The man she kept photographing looked exactly like him. Same build, same walk, same coat, same face. Evan had stared at the photos for hours trying to find mistakes, pixel errors, distortions, strange proportions, anything to suggest an editing trick, but there were none, and the more images she sent, the more undeniable it became. There was someone out there pretending to be him, someone wearing his life like a mask, someone who stalked in the night with Evan's face. The police had laughed at him when he tried to explain. Coincidence, they said. People look like each other all the time. Even when he showed them the pictures, they shrugged it off. Could be you, could be someone who resembles you. Not enough to file a report. Evan had walked home from the station with a sinking feeling that chilled him deeper than the wind ever could. Someone was framing him. Someone was studying him. Someone wanted to become him. Or worse, someone already had. Tonight, after the latest message, Evan felt a familiar coil of tension twist in his stomach. He typed back, "It's not me. I'm not following you. Someone else." But before he could finish, Hannah replied again, "You were here 5 minutes ago. Don't lie." Evan froze. He had been home all night. He jumped up from the couch, heart pounding, and rushed to the window. The street below was empty. No movement, no cars, no footsteps, just the quiet hum of street lamps glowing through the mist. His reflection stared back at him through the glass, pale, tense, frightened. He leaned closer, hands shaking. His breath fogged the window. He wiped it away, and that was when he saw it. A shadowed figure standing across the street, just barely visible, still as stone, staring up at his building. Evan's breath caught. He blinked. The figure didn't move, didn't turn, didn't twitch, just stood there with an eerie stillness that made Evan's skin crawl. He squinted through the darkness, stepping closer to the glass, heartbeat thundering in his ears. The man's face wasn't visible, only a silhouette beneath the dim red glow of the street lamp. But something about the posture, the outline of the shoulders, the tilt of the head, it felt familiar. Uncomfortably familiar. Evan whispered to himself, voice shaking, "That can't be." Then the figure took one slow step forward. The light hit the face just enough to reveal a jawline, a cheekbone, a glint of eyes reflecting upward. Evan staggered backward from the window, chest tight, the floor suddenly unsteady beneath him. His heart hammered violently. He thought it might burst. His hands shook uncontrollably. He blinked rapidly, hoping, praying that the vision would disappear. But when he looked again, the street was empty. The figure was gone, erased, as if he had never been there at all. Evan's knees nearly buckled. He pressed his palm to the cold glass, breath trembling. His mind raced, grasping for logic, but logic had abandoned him. Fear flooded through him like a cold tide. Someone out there wore his face. Someone out there wanted him to see. Someone was becoming bolder. And as Evan stared into the darkness where the figure had stood, he felt a creeping realization wind around him like a tightening rope. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was personal. And tonight was just the beginning. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed long after midnight, replaying the clips Detective Marlowe had shown him until the light of his phone burned the backs of his eyes. The motel door, the bookstore window, the alley behind the train station. 3 locations he knew well, 3 places he hadn't been in weeks. Yet each video captured a man who moved like him, dressed like him, walked with the same slight forward lean he had developed during years of desk work. The same posture, the same gait, the same hesitations. It felt like watching a recording of himself sleepwalking through parts of the city he'd long forgotten. He paused the video, the stalker, or whatever he was, turning his head slightly to the side. The frame froze, and the breath in Ethan's lungs vanished. The profile was unmistakable. His chin, his nose shape, even the small curve at the corner of his lips that people used to call his thinking smirk. But something was wrong with the eyes. Even blurred by motion and shadow, those eyes were colder, hollow, like they weren't looking at the woman in the footage at all, but at something behind her or inside her. Ethan scrubbed backward, then forward. The figure's pupils never dilated, even as the streetlight flickered. Human eyes didn't behave like that. He set the phone down, palms trembling. He needed an explanation. An identical twin he never knew about? Impossible. His mother had been an only child, and his father died when he was 6. There was no family to ask. A deep fake? That didn't match how the shadows behaved naturally across the man's body. Someone wearing a mask? Maybe, but who would go through that trouble, let alone stalk a stranger, just to frame him? A knock startled him. 3 gentle taps. 1, 2, 3, like someone testing to see if he were awake. Ethan froze. He lived alone. No one should be knocking at 2:14 a.m. He approached the door slowly and pressed his eye to the peephole. A long, empty hallway. He exhaled shakily. But as he stepped away, another sound echoed, this time from his balcony. A soft shuffle, then a faint scraping as if fingers were trailing along the metal railing. He moved toward the curtains, heartbeat drumming in his ears. The apartment was on the 4th floor. There was no way anyone could reach the balcony without coming through his door. Still, the sound persisted. Scrape, pause, scrape. Ethan reached out and parted the curtain no more than a sliver. His blood iced. Standing on the balcony, backlit by the city glow, was a silhouette with his height, his posture, his shape. The figure stood perfectly still, facing the glass door, as though it had been waiting for him to look. And though the silhouette had no visible features, Ethan felt, deep in a primitive, instinctive part of his brain, that it was smiling. He staggered back, tripping over the rug. When he looked again, the balcony was empty. The railing still vibrated slightly, as if someone had just pushed off of it. Ethan fumbled for his phone and dialed Detective Marlowe with shaking hands. She picked up on the second ring, voice groggy but alert. "Ethan, what is it?" "There's someone on my balcony," he whispered. "Someone who looks exactly like me." A long silence followed. Then Marlowe said, "Stay inside. Don't open the door. I'm on my way." He swallowed, throat dry. Ethan? What if it was me? No, she answered firm. Whoever this is, you're the victim, not the suspect. Another pause. And Ethan, now you understand why I took your case. He didn't understand. Not yet. But he would.
The street had no name. At least not one printed on signs, maps, or navigation apps. It was the kind of place known only to people who needed to know it. An industrial block of forgotten warehouses and defunct loading docks, where streetlights flickered like dying stars and the asphalt still carried faint tire marks from trucks that hadn't existed in decades. Detective Marlowe parked her unmarked sedan beside a nondescript brick building with boarded second-floor windows and a rusted metal door that looked more like the entrance to an abandoned boiler room than a sanctuary. "This is the safe place?" Ethan asked. "It's safer than your apartment," she replied quietly. That was not the reassurance he hoped for. Marlowe scanned the surroundings before stepping out, hand resting on her holster. She motioned for Ethan to follow. The night air was heavier here, thick with humidity, silence, and the faint metallic tang of old machinery long since dead. When she unlocked the door, Ethan expected darkness. Instead, a warm yellow bulb flickered to life overhead, illuminating a narrow concrete hallway lined with security cameras and reinforced steel beams. This used to be a records vault. Then the department lost funding and everyone forgot about it, except me. She led him down the hall. Their footsteps echoed softly, swallowed by the building's dense walls. "Why bring me here?" Ethan asked. "Because whatever's stalking you doesn't behave like a person, and your apartment only had one point of entry. This place is harder to breach." She stopped in front of a heavy door marked Storage 3B. These rooms were built to withstand fire, flooding, break-ins, even riots. You'll be safe here. She opened the door. Inside was a surprisingly well-kept space. A cot, a small table, a meaty fridge, a chair, even a stack of blankets. A portable heater hummed softly in the corner. It wasn't comfortable, but it felt grounded, real, and above all, secure. Ethan entered hesitantly. "Why are you doing all this for me?" he asked. Marlowe leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Because the other victims didn't have anyone who believed them early enough. Their cases got dismissed as mental breaks or misidentifications, no meaningful protection, no follow-ups. And then they vanished. I'm not letting that happen again. He studied her face, the fatigue around her eyes, the shadows under them, the way she held herself like someone carrying responsibility heavier than most people could bear. "You lost someone to this, didn't you?" he asked softly. Her eyes flickered. Not anger, not surprise, but something darker, something old. "My partner," she said, 8 months ago. Ethan's chest tightened. "The first case?" She nodded. "He came to me saying he was being followed by someone who looked exactly like him. I thought he was overworked, stressed, maybe paranoid from the long hours. I told him to take a few days off to rest." Her gaze drifted down the hallway as if replaying a memory. 3 days later, he was gone. No break-in, no sign of struggle. His car still in the garage, his wallet and keys in the kitchen. She paused. "And the night before he disappeared, he told me something that kept me awake ever since." Ethan waited. He said, "The thing watching me, it doesn't blink." A chill ran through Ethan's body. She met his eyes. "Tonight, when you said your stalker's eyes didn't dilate, that's when I knew. It's the same pattern." She stepped into the room, lowering her voice. "I need you to tell me the truth, even if it sounds strange, even if you think it's impossible. Are there any moments recently when you feel like you weren't yourself?" Ethan hesitated, but he remembered. The bathroom mirror, the flicker that didn't match his movement, the way his reflection seemed a fraction too slow, as if catching up to him. "There was something earlier tonight," he admitted. "The mirror felt wrong, like it was watching, or behind, or something." Marlowe's expression darkened. "That means stage 3 may already be starting. You said stage 3 is when the victim disappears. It doesn't happen immediately. There's still time. How much?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Nobody's ever lived long enough to tell us." Ethan sat on the cot, head in his hands. "What does it want?" he whispered.
Marlowe exhaled slowly. I don't think it wants anything in the way we understand wanting. It mimics, follows, studies, and then it replaces. Not out of malice, not out of survival, more like instinct. Like an animal? No, she said. Animals show emotion, curiosity, fear, hunger. This thing, your double, doesn't show anything. Then what do we call it? Marlowe met his gaze. A doppelganger is the closest word we have, but this isn't folklore, not a ghost, not a demon, more like a break in reality, a copy leaking through. Ethan swallowed hard. A copy of me? Yes, and if it replaces me, what happens to the real me? Marlowe didn't answer, because she didn't know, because no one had ever come back. He lay back on the cot, suddenly exhausted, but afraid to close his eyes, afraid of what might be standing there when he opened them again. Marlowe pulled a small device from her coat pocket and set it on the table. This detects motion in heat signatures, she said. The second anything moves within 20 feet of this room, it'll alert me. She headed for the door. I'll be right outside. I'm not leaving this building tonight. Ethan nodded. Marlowe killed the overhead lights, leaving only a dim lamp glowing in the corner. The shadows stretched long across the concrete walls as the door closed behind her. For a long while, Ethan lay still, listening to the faint hum of the heater, the quiet creaking of the building settling in the night, the occasional low rumble of a passing truck somewhere blocks away. His mind drifted to the silhouette on his balcony, the slow scrape of fingers on metal, the handprint on the window, and the reflection that lagged behind him. What if right now, in some other part of the city, something wearing his face was walking the streets, breathing his air, matching his footsteps, imitating him perfectly? What if someone saw it and thought it was him? What if it was moving closer still, down the street, past the empty warehouses, through the rusted door he had entered minutes earlier? What if it was already inside the building? His heart pounded in the quiet. He forced himself to sit up. The room's shadows seemed thicker now, as if gathering in the corners, clustering beneath the cot, stretching across the walls like long, reaching arms. He focused on the door, the metal frame, the latch, the motion sensor's faint green light. He waited for the alert. 20 minutes passed, 40, an hour. Eventually, exhaustion pulled at his eyelids, heavy and insistent. He lay back again. Just for a moment, he told himself, just a short rest. His eyes finally closed. Then, a soft click. Not the door, not the heater. Something in the mirror across the room. Ethan's eyes snapped open. There was a mirror mounted above the small sink in the corner of the safe house. He hadn't noticed it before. A narrow rectangle with a metal frame, reflecting the faint glow of the lamp. Except, now, the reflection wasn't right. The room and the mirror looked identical. Same walls, same cot, same lamp. But something in the angle, in the depth of the shadows, felt wrong. Like the mirror was showing a room that looked like his, but wasn't exactly his. He sat up slowly. In the mirror, the cot was empty, but Ethan was still on it. His breath caught in his throat. He stood. In the mirror, the bed remained empty. The mirror wasn't showing him. It was showing the room without him. His pulse hammered. Then, a shape stepped into the reflection from the left edge of the mirror. Tall, same posture, same shoulders, same face. His face, but with eyes like voids, dark, unblinking, hollow. The figure in the mirror smiled, then lifted its hand and pressed its palm slowly against a glass, a perfect mirror of the handprint on his apartment window. Ethan stumbled backward, knocking into the cot, breath slicing out in a gasp. The motion sensor device beeped sharply. Marlowe's footsteps thundered down the hall. The figure in the mirror tilted its head. The reflection dimmed, darkened, and vanished. Marlowe burst into the room, gun raised. "Ethan!" He pointed at the mirror, voice shaking. "It was here. It was inside. It looked right at me." Marlowe scanned the mirror, the corners, the shadows. Nothing. She holstered the gun and moved closer, examining the glass. Her expression hardened. There was a handprint on the inside. Ethan felt his knees weaken. Marlowe spoke softly, gravely.
It knows where you are now.
The safe house was no longer safe. Marlowe's words, "it knows where you are now," hung in the air like a death sentence. Ethan sat trembling on the cot while she stood facing the mirror, gun drawn again, even though both of them knew a bullet wouldn't stop whatever had pressed its palm to the glass. "This shouldn't be possible," she whispered. "It's never breached a secure location before." "Breached?" Ethan echoed. Marlowe lowered her gun slowly. "It's part of the pattern. As the doppelganger grows stronger, the boundary between its space and ours weakens." Ethan felt pressure building behind his eyes, like a migraine forming at the base of his skull. "You said it copies," he murmured. "But copies what exactly? My body? My voice? My memories?" Marlowe hesitated. "We don't know how much it learns. And what happens once it learns everything?" She didn't answer, because they both knew. Once it finished learning, the real one always vanished. Ethan ran a hand over his face. His skin felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else now. It was as if the stalker wasn't simply impersonating him, but pulling pieces of him away, bit by bit, like threads unraveling from a sweater. "Ethan," Marlowe said, "we're leaving." "Where do we go?" he asked hollowly. "There's nowhere it can't reach." "We'll figure something out, but we can't stay here." She grabbed her bag, checked the hallway, then waved him forward. Ethan rose unsteadily, still shaken, but followed her into the hall. The motion detectors cast faint green glows on the floor, blinking softly. Blink, 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 like dying fireflies. They moved quietly. Halfway to the exit, one of the lights flickered red. Marlowe froze. "That means movement," she whispered. Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Where?" She tapped the detector screen mounted to her wrist. The red blip pulsed. "2 rooms down." Ethan swallowed hard. "It's inside." "Back!" she hissed, pushing him behind her. "Move!" They crept toward the emergency stairs. Marlowe kept her weapon aimed down the corridor, eyes sharp, jaw tense. Ethan grabbed the railing and pulled open the stairwell door. Darkness. The stairwell light had been smashed. Glass dust glittered on the concrete. Marlowe clicked her flashlight on. A handprint smeared the wall beside the stairs. Long, narrow, familiar. Ethan's breath came out in a ragged tremor. "It already passed through here." Marlowe motioned him down the steps. "Go!" They descended quickly, the narrow shaft swallowing the sound of their footsteps. Every floor they passed seemed colder, the air thickening with a strange metallic smell. On the second-floor landing, Ethan paused. "Marlowe, do you hear that?" She stopped. A faint sound drifted up the stairwell. Soft, slow. Footsteps. But not theirs. A second pair, perfectly synchronized except for a slight delay, one fraction of a heartbeat behind. Step, step, step. "It's mimicking us," Ethan whispered. Marlowe grabbed his wrist. "Don't look back." He didn't. They reached the bottom and burst into the loading bay. Rusted chains hung from the ceiling. Old crates were stacked like sarcophagi along the walls. The overhead exit door loomed ahead. Marlowe punched in the code. The door buzzed, then jammed halfway. "Come on," she muttered, shoving her shoulder against the metal. Ethan pushed with her, the hinges groaning. The footsteps were closer now, a slow, steady echo that twisted in the hollow of the loading bay like walking inside a cracked mirror. The door finally wrenched upward. "Go!" yelled Marlowe. Ethan ducked under the metal just as the footsteps reached the doorway behind them. He stumbled outside into the humid night air. The industrial street was dark, except for one failing streetlight flickering behind him. He turned. Marlowe squeezed through the opening, and something grabbed the bottom edge of the door from the inside. His hand,
The fingers curled beneath the metal, lifting effortlessly. "Marlo!" Ethan shouted. She drew her bun and fired twice under the door. The screams Ethan expected never came. Instead, silence. The door slammed shut. Marlo doubled over, breathing hard. "It's here. It's not human. It doesn't react like anything alive." Ethan backed away, heart pounding. Across the street, the shadows deepened. The flickering streetlight buzzed overhead. Marlo straightened and turned toward Ethan. "We need to get to the car, now." They hurried across the pavement, but when they reached the sidewalk, something made Ethan stop. A figure stood at the far end of the street. Same height, same walk, same silhouette. It stepped into the dim glow, and Ethan felt the last thread of hope inside him snap. It wasn't an approximation anymore. It was perfect. Every detail of him, hair, skin tone, the way he held his shoulders, the slight forward lean. Its eyes, though, remained hollow, dark tokens of something that had never belonged on a human face. It tilted its head and smiled. Marlo raised her weapon. "Stay behind me." The doppelganger took a single step forward, but the world didn't ripple or distort, no supernatural flare, no glitching glitch, just a quiet, natural footstep, soft on the asphalt, like a person. Ethan whispered, "It looks exactly like me." Marlo didn't lower her eye. "This is stage 4. "What's stage 4? "She's already learned everything," she said quietly. "It's finished." "Finished with me?" The doppelganger took another step, and Ethan suddenly felt a sharp jolt inside his skull, a stabbing, white-hot flash of pain. He fell to his knees. Marlo knelt beside him. "Ethan, I feel dizzy," he gasped, like I'm being pulled." Tears welled in his eyes from the pressure building behind them. The doppelganger reached the edge of the sidewalk, its movements now perfectly synced with Ethan's breathing pattern. A mirror, a replacement, a fief of existence. Ethan's vision blurred. "I can't, Marlo, I can't feel my hands." His fingers were fading, not visually, physically. He touched the ground, but the sensation felt distant, muffled, like touching through layers of fabric. Marlo grabbed his face. "Look at me. Stay with me." He tried. God, he tried. But behind her, the doppelganger took another slow step, and with it, Ethan's limbs grew heavier. His voice trembled. "It's taking me." Marlo stood between him and the figure. "Stop!" she screamed at the creature. "Stop right now!"
Detective Marlowe arrived 22 minutes later, though for Ethan it felt like hours measured in heartbeats. When she knocked, he hesitated before opening, scared that the face behind the door might be his own. But when he pulled it ajar, Marlowe's sharp, tired eyes met his, her hair pulled back, badge at her belt, one hand resting on the holster beneath her jacket. "Show me," she said. He led her to the balcony. The glass was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been for a warm night. Marlo swept the balcony with the kind of methodical focus Ethan wished he could borrow. She crouched by the railing, brushing her fingers over the metal. "Something was here," she murmured. Ethan stiffened. "How can you tell?" "The dust," she said, pointing with her chin. "Most people don't clean these often. See how the layer is disturbed here, and here, and here?" Someone leaned against it. "But I live on the 4th floor." She didn't answer, didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. People don't just appear here. Unless there was something more than a person. She stood. "Tell me everything from the beginning." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to start where the nightmare had started, except he didn't really know that moment. Maybe it was weeks ago, maybe months. He mentioned the videos, the stalking footage, the way the figure walked like him, turned like him. Then he described the balcony silhouette. Marlo didn't interrupt until he said the final detail, how the figure stood perfectly still, facing him through the glass. "That's the part that bothered you most," she observed. "It felt like he was waiting for me, like," he hesitated, "like he knew what I would do next." She didn't dismiss it or tell him he was imagining things. Instead, she rubbed her forehead, eyes drifting back toward the balcony. "That matches the pattern," she said softly. Ethan felt a jolt. "Pattern?" Marlowe sighed, a long, weary sigh that suggested she'd been carrying this burden far longer than Ethan had been suffering it. "We've been tracking incidents for nearly 9 months. First one across the river, then another in Temple District, a third near the industrial port. Same story every time. Someone reports being stalked by a person who looks exactly like them. That can't be real. 3 victims, all saw someone with their face, all insisted it was perfect, down to scars, posture, gestures, even the way they breathed." Ethan stared. "And what happened to them?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. She didn't answer immediately. "Detective?" She said, "They vanished, finally. Each one disappeared within 3 weeks of their first sighting." The room tilted slightly around him. "Disappeared? How?" he whispered. "No witnesses, no break-ins, no struggle. It's like they just stepped out of their lives." Ethan swallowed hard. "You think that's what's happening to me?" "I don't know, but your case has clear video evidence. That's new. And your stalker didn't bother to disguise his face this time. So it's the same thing?" Marlowe didn't react to the word, but she didn't reject it either. "That's what we're trying to determine." Ethan paced the living room, fingers pressed to his temples. The floorboards creaked under his feet, those familiar sounds grounding him just enough to keep him from spiraling. "Why me?" he muttered. "I'm not special. I'm not rich. I'm not important." Then quieter. "I barely have anyone left. Why choose me?" Marlowe watched him with a strange sympathy. Victims never had a common link. They weren't targeted for who they were targeted for being. He stopped pacing. "For being what?" "Human," she said. The word felt heavier than it should have. She continued, "Whatever this doppelganger phenomenon is, it's not about motive in the traditional sense. It doesn't stalk out of hatred or revenge. Its behavior is methodical, emotionless, predictable only in its unpredictability. It watches its target, studies them, recreates them." "Recreates?" That's the only word that fits. Ethan's mouth went dry. A sudden rustling behind them snapped both their heads toward the sound. The living room window, on the opposite wall from the balcony, had fogged over slightly, a thin layer of condensation forming a faint handprint. The outline was unmistakable, long fingers pressed lightly against the glass from the outside. Marlowe moved fast, gun out, safety off. She approached the window cautiously, Ethan right behind her, though every instinct screamed for him to hide. The handprint was on the outside, 4th floor, just like the balcony. Marlowe pointed the flashlight through the glass, scanning the narrow fire escape below. Nothing. No footsteps, no shadows, no fleeing silhouette. "Stay away from the windows," she said. Ethan nodded shakily. Marlowe pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the print. "This is the second pattern." "There's more than one pattern?" "There's always more than one," she murmured. "First the distant sightings, then the close ones, then the contact phase." "Contact," Ethan echoed, the word feeling wrong in his mouth. "That's what the prior victims reported. As the imposter gets closer, the real one starts losing time, blackouts, waking up where they don't remember going, mirrors behaving oddly, reflections lagging by a second." Ethan's stomach lurched. "Mirrors? You haven't noticed anything like that?" He thought about the bathroom mirror this morning, the momentary flicker when he'd walked past, catching a reflection that didn't match his speed. He dismissed it as exhaustion, or maybe he blinked. But now he wasn't sure. Marlowe watched his reaction and read him like a book. "You have." Maybe," he whispered. I thought I was tired. She looked at the photo again. You're at stage 2. And what happens at stage 3? He already knew he didn't want the answer. Stage 3 is when the target disappears. Ethan's body felt too light, too unstable, like he might float away or collapse entirely. He whispered, "So what do I do?" For now, Marlowe holstered her weapon and began writing something on a card. "You stay with me tonight. You're not safe alone." Ethan blinked. "Where? A station?" "No." She slid the card into his hand. "An off-record safe place. You're not going to be booked or questioned. You're going to be protected." He turned the card over. A simple address. No name, no department logo. "This isn't police protocol," he murmured. "No, it isn't." He couldn't tell if that scared him more or less. Marlowe walked to the kitchen and turned the lights off, leaving only the dim glow of the hallway bulb. "Pack just what you need. We leave in 5 minutes. And Ethan," he looked at her, "don't look at any reflective surfaces on the way out." A chill spidered up his spine. "Why?" "Because if it's already close enough to leave prints on your window," her voice darkened, "then your reflection might not be yours anymore." Ethan felt as though the air had been drained from the apartment. He walked toward his bedroom to grab a bag, but as he passed the bathroom door, something pulled at him, an instinct, a magnetic pull. The mirror inside was just visible from the doorway, a black rectangle in the dimness. He stopped. The mirror was too dark, too still, like a screen waiting to play a video. "Ethan," Marlowe sharply said, "don't." But something in the darkness shifted. Just a ripple, just enough for Ethan to feel certain, absolutely undeniably certain, that something inside that mirror was moving a fraction slower than he was. He stumbled backward. "I'm ready," he said hoarsely. Marlowe nodded. "Good. We leave now." As they stepped into the hallway, Ethan felt a presence behind him, watching through the window, through the mirror, maybe even through his own eyes. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he understood something awful. The thing stalking him wasn't imitating him, it was replacing him. The thing paused. Then it did something Ethan would never forget. It raised both arms and stretched its fingers outward, slowly, deliberately, like someone pulling invisible strings. Ethan choked. His own arms rose. He didn't want them to. He didn't try to. They just followed, perfectly in sync. "No!" Marlowe roared, stepping closer. The creature's face shifted into a cold, unnatural grin. It lowered its arms. Ethan's arms fell. He collapsed forward, collapsing into Marlowe's arms. "Ethan, stay awake. Stay with me." He heard her voice as if underwater. "Ethan, I'm scared." I know. Hold on." But he could feel himself slipping, like a photograph being slowly erased. His thoughts blurred, the edges of the world softened, his breath felt borrowed. A low hum filled the air. He didn't know if it was inside his mind or coming from the figure. The doppelganger stepped closer. Marlowe raised her gun again, hands shaking now. "Come any closer and I'll shoot." The figure stopped. For a moment, everything went still, silent, suspended. Then the creature lifted its hand and pointed, not at Marlowe, at Ethan. Marlowe fired. The bullet hit the creature's shoulder. It jerked, not from pain, but like someone noticing a mild inconvenience. Then it straightened again and smiled wider. "It's not going to stop," Ethan whispered. He could no longer hear his own voice clearly. Marlowe grabbed him by the shirt. "Ethan, listen to me, listen." He blinked. Her face flickered. Once. Twice. His vision ghosted, double images of Marlowe overlapping, separating, merging again. "Ethan, what's happening?" he whimpered. She cupped his cheeks, her tums trembling. "Ethan, don't you disappear on me! Don't you do it! Don't—" His body felt weightless. His lungs struggled to remember how to breathe. The doppelganger stepped directly behind Marlowe now, close enough to touch, and then it disappeared. Not vanished, but stepped into him. A silent, invisible collision. Ethan felt a cold rush through his chest, like plunging into icy water. His vision blackened at the edges. His heartbeat stuttered. He gasped and inhaled someone else's breath. A second heartbeat pulsed inside him. His thoughts scrambled. Then everything went still. Marlowe stared at him, horror tightening her features. "Ethan?" He stood slowly. But the man looking at her wasn't Ethan anymore. Not fully, not alone. His eyes, once warm, were now hollow, dark, unblinking. He tilted his head and smiled.